You feel it in quiet moments. That strange emptiness that sits in your chest like a stone. You're successful. You're functioning. You pay your bills. You show up to work. You smile when you're supposed to. But inside there's this absence. This hollow space where something should be but isn't. You've tried to explain it. To friends, to partners, maybe even to therapists. But the words never feel right. I had a normal childhood, you say. My parents weren't abusive. They didn't hit me. They provided for me. And yet you walk through life feeling like you're performing, like you're watching yourself from outside your body. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You flinch at compliments. You feel guilty for wanting things, for needing things, for taking up space. You look at other people and wonder, how do they just exist without this constant hum of wrongness, this background noise that whispers you're too much and not enough at the same time? Here's what I need you to hear. This feeling has a name. It's called emotional neglect, and it doesn't come from what your parents did to you. It comes from what they didn't do. From the absence of something so fundamental, you never even knew it was missing. You weren't beaten. You weren't screamed at. You were fed, clothed, educated. But somewhere along the way, the most important part of you, your emotional self, was left in a room alone, and no one ever came back. Today, we're going to understand why. We're going to talk about the types of parents who create this emptiness. Not because they're monsters, but because they themselves were never taught how to see you. This is part 1 of a series on the 12 types of parents who create empty children. Today, we focus on 2 of the most damaging: narcissistic parents and authoritarian parents. Let's begin. Before we dive into specific types, we need to understand what emotional neglect actually is. Because here's the thing, it's not what you think. When we hear the word neglect, we picture obvious things. A child left home alone. No food in the fridge, dirty clothes, missed doctor's appointments. That's physical neglect, and yes, it's real and it's damaging. But emotional neglect? It's invisible. It's the white space in a photograph. It's what should have been there but wasn't. Imagine you're 7 years old. You come home from school and you're upset because your best friend said something mean. You walk into the kitchen where your mother is cooking dinner. You start to tell her what happened and she says, "Not now, honey. I'm busy," or "Stop being so sensitive." Kids say things, or, "Well, what did you do to make her say that?" Or she says nothing at all. Just keep stirring the pot. In that moment, something doesn't happen. Your emotion isn't acknowledged. Your pain isn't witnessed. Your inner world, the thing that makes you you, is treated as if it doesn't exist, or worse, as if it's an inconvenience. This is emotional neglect, not an action, but an absence. And here's what makes it so insidious. Your parents might have loved you. They might have worked 3 jobs to put food on the table. They might have driven you to soccer practice and helped with homework. They might have genuinely believed they were doing everything right, but love is not enough. Providing is not enough. You can have a roof over your head and still be emotionally homeless. Because what you needed, what every child needs, wasn't just care, it was attunement. It was someone who could see your inner world and respond to it. Someone who could say, "I see that you're hurting. Tell me about it. Your feelings matter." Instead, many of us got the opposite message. Your feelings are inconvenient. Your needs are selfish. Your pain is weakness. Be grateful. Stop complaining. Others have it worse. So we learned to disappear. Not physically, but psychologically. We learned to cut off the part of us that felt, that needed, that wanted. Because that part wasn't welcome. And now, decades later, we're adults who can't access our own emotions, who don't know what we want, who feel guilty for having needs. We thought we were broken, but we weren't. We were adapting to a world that couldn't hold us. Now let me show you how this happens. Let me show you the specific ways parents, often without meaning to, create this emptiness. The first type of parent who creates empty children is the narcissistic parent. Now let me be clear, I'm not talking about clinical narcissistic personality disorder. I'm talking about a specific style of parenting where the parent sees the child not as a separate person with their own inner life, but as an extension of themselves, a reflection, a trophy, a project. Here's what that looks like. Meet Sid. He's 16 years old and he's just gotten into a serious car accident. His fault, he was texting while driving. The car is totaled. Miraculously, no one is seriously hurt, but Sid is shaken, terrified, in shock. His mother arrives at the scene and the first words out of her mouth are, "How could you do this to me? Do you know how embarrassing this is? What will the neighbors think?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm so glad you're alive." But, "How could you do this to me?" In that moment, Sid's terror, his shame, his need for comfort, none of it matters. What matters is how this reflects on her. Her reputation, her image as a perfect mother with perfect children. Sid is sent to his room, not to be comforted, but to be hidden, because his pain, his mistake, his very humanity is a source of shame for her. This is the narcissistic parent. To them, you are not a person. You are a mirror, and when you fail, when you're imperfect, when you're messy or emotional or complicated, you crack the mirror, and they can't tolerate that. Let me give you another example. Beatrice is 19. She's been accepted to an Ivy League university, and her mother tells everyone, at parties, at work, to strangers in line at the grocery store, "My daughter goes to Princeton." But here's the thing, Beatrice is miserable. The pressure is crushing her. She's having panic attacks. She's not sleeping. She calls her mother and says, "I think I want to transfer. This isn't the right fit for me." And her mother says, "Don't be ridiculous. Do you know how lucky you are? Do you know how many people would kill for this opportunity? You're being selfish." Selfish. That word, it's the weapon of choice for narcissistic parents. Because to them, your needs are selfish. Your feelings are selfish. Anything that doesn't serve their image, their ego, their need to feel like a successful parent is selfish. Beatrice stays at Princeton. She graduates. She's depressed for years, and she never tells her mother because she learned early. My pain doesn't matter. My needs are selfish. What matters is how I make her look. Does this sound familiar? Did you grow up feeling like your job was to make your parents proud? To be the perfect child, the successful one, the easy one? Did you learn that your emotions were inconvenient, that your struggles reflected badly on them, that you needed to hide your pain, your mistakes, your humanity, because they couldn't handle it? Here's what happens to children of narcissistic parents. They grow up believing their worth is conditional, that love is something you earn through achievement, through perfection, through making others look good. They become adults who can't accept compliments, because deep down they know they're not really seen. The praise isn't for them, it's for the image they project. They become adults who feel like imposters because they've spent their whole lives performing a version of themselves that's palatable, impressive, convenient. And they've buried the real self so deep they can't find it anymore. They become adults who feel empty, because you can't feel full when you've spent your whole life feeding someone else's ego. This is what narcissistic parents do, not always intentionally. Often they themselves were never truly seen. Often they're deeply insecure underneath the bravado. Often they're so fragile that their child's imperfection feels like an attack. But intention doesn't erase impact, and the impact is this: a child who learns that who they really are is not enough, that love is performance, that their inner world is a burden. The second type of parent who creates empty children is the authoritarian parent. This is different from the narcissistic parent. The narcissistic parent needs you to reflect well on them. The authoritarian parent needs you to obey. Their parenting philosophy can be summed up in one sentence: because I said so. Rules are absolute. Compliance is mandatory. Your feelings, your needs, your individual temperament? Irrelevant. Let me tell you about Sophia. Sophia is 30 years old. She's a successful attorney. She has her own apartment, her own life, and every Christmas she's expected to come home for dinner. Not asked, expected. This year, her boyfriend invites her to meet his family for Christmas. It's a big step in their relationship. She's nervous, excited. She calls her parents to let them know she won't be able to make it to Christmas dinner this year. Her father's response: if you don't come to Christmas dinner, don't bother coming at all, and you can return the gifts we bought you. Sophia is 30. She hasn't lived at home in over a decade, and still the message is clear. Your needs don't matter. Your life doesn't matter. What matters is the rule, the tradition, the expectation, and if you deviate from it, you will be punished. This is the authoritarian parent, rigid, inflexible. Control is more important than connection. Let me give you another example. This one's harder to hear. Joseph is 10 years old. It's Halloween. He's dressed as a cowboy and he's so excited. He's been planning this costume for weeks. His parents take him trick-or-treating, and at the first house he sees a friend from school. He runs over to say hi, laughing, his candy bag swinging. When he comes back to his parents, his father grabs his arm. Hard. When I tell you to come, you come immediately. You don't run off like a wild animal. Joseph tries to explain that he was just saying hi to his friend. His father's response: I don't care. When I say come, you come. Now we're going home. No more candy. Joseph is devastated. He starts to cry, and his father says, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. Let me be very clear about what just happened. Joseph did something completely normal for a 10-year-old. He saw a friend and got excited. He didn't run into the street. He didn't disobey a safety rule. He was just being a kid. But to the authoritarian parent, that's not the point. The point is obedience. Immediate, unquestioning obedience. No matter the context, no matter the child's feelings, no matter if the rule makes sense. Joseph learns, my natural impulses are wrong. My joy is wrong. What I want doesn't matter. What matters is control. Here's one more story. This one comes from a woman named Renee, who shared her experience in therapy. Renee was 13. She was doing homework at the kitchen table. Her father walked in and told her to stop and vacuum the living room. She said, "Can I finish this first?" "It's due tomorrow." He exploded, screamed at her for being disrespectful, lazy, ungrateful, told her she cared more about her grades than her family, made her vacuum the whole house while berating her. Renee cried the entire time, and here's what she took from that moment. My needs are selfish. My priorities are wrong. When I ask for anything, I'm being disrespectful. For the next 20 years, Renee couldn't advocate for herself. At work, she took on everyone else's tasks, even when she was drowning. In relationships, she gave and gave until she had nothing left. She couldn't say no, she couldn't ask for help, because she learned asking is disrespectful, needing is selfish. Does this sound familiar? Did you grow up in a house with a lot of rules? Rules that didn't make sense, but you weren't allowed to question them? Did you learn that obedience was more important than your feelings? That why was a dangerous question? Did you get punished for normal childhood behavior? For being loud, for being messy, for being emotional, for being anything other than a perfectly controlled little soldier? Here's what happens to children of authoritarian parents. They grow up not knowing who they are, because they never had the space to figure it out. Their entire childhood was spent learning to suppress their natural impulses, to follow external rules, to obey without question. They become adults who have no idea what they want because they were never allowed to want. They become adults who can't make decisions because they were never allowed to think for themselves. They become adults who are either rigidly rule-following or violently rebellious because they never learnt the middle ground of autonomous, flexible selfhood. And most devastatingly, they become adults who blame themselves, who think, if I had just been better, if I had just obeyed, if I had just been less difficult, less emotional, less me. But here's the truth. You weren't difficult. You were a child. And children are supposed to be loud, messy, curious, impulsive, emotional. That's not a flaw. That's development. The flaw wasn't in you. The flaw was in a parenting style that valued control over connection. That saw a child's natural self as something to be crushed rather than guided. Authoritarian parents often believe they're doing the right thing. They believe strict discipline creates strong, successful adults. They believe tough love prepares you for a harsh world. But what it actually creates is adults who can't access their own desires, who live in fear of authority, who are so used to ignoring their own needs that they have forgotten they have them. It creates adults who feel empty because you can't be full when you've spent your entire life hollowing yourself out to fit someone else's expectations. Now we need to talk about what's really happening here, because it's not just about what these parents did, it's about what you learned. See, the human brain is designed to adapt. When you're a child, your survival depends on your caregivers, so your brain does everything it can to maintain that attachment, even if it means distorting reality, even if it means blaming yourself. This is what psychologists call a survival mechanism. But it doesn't feel like survival, it feels like truth. So when your narcissistic parent made everything about them, you didn't think, my parent is self-absorbed. You thought, I am not good enough. When your authoritarian parent punished you for normal behavior, you didn't think, this rule doesn't make sense. You thought, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm too much. This is the wound beneath the wound. You learned that your needs were selfish, that your emotions were inconvenient, that your very existence was a burden. You learned to monitor yourself constantly, to scan for danger, to anticipate what others needed before they asked, to make yourself small, to apologize for existing. This is what therapists call hypervigilance. Your nervous system got stuck in a permanent state of, am I safe? Am I too much? Am I about to be punished? Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in adulthood. You're at work, your boss praises you, and instead of feeling proud, you feel anxious. You think, what do they want from me? When will they realize I'm a fraud? You're in a relationship. Your partner says, what do you want for dinner? And you freeze because you genuinely don't know. You've spent so long prioritizing everyone else's needs that you can't access your own. You're with friends. Someone asks how you're doing. You say, I'm fine, even though you're drowning, because you learned that your pain makes people uncomfortable, that sharing your struggles is selfish, that you should be grateful and stop complaining. You accomplish something, a promotion, a finished project, a personal goal, and there's no joy, just relief. Relief that you've earned your place for another day. Relief that you've proven you're not as worthless as you feel. This is what emotional neglect does. It doesn't just hurt you in childhood, it rewires you. It teaches you to abandon yourself, to be the parent to yourself that your parents couldn't be, but in the worst way. Harsh, critical, never satisfied. You become your own authoritarian parent, your own narcissistic mirror. You punish yourself for imperfection. You only value yourself for what you produce, what you achieve, how you make others feel. Here's the really painful part. You might not even remember specific traumatic moments. There might not be a single event you can point to and say, that's when it happened. Because it wasn't an event. It was 1,000 small moments. 1,000 times your emotions were dismissed. 1,000 times your needs were called selfish. 1,000 times you reached out and no one reached back. It's like a surgeon operating with dull tools in dim light. Each cut alone might not seem like much, but together they leave scars, deep ones, invisible ones, and you carry those scars into every relationship, every job, every moment of your adult life. You become someone who overachieves to earn love, undervalues your own needs, apologizes constantly, feels guilty for wanting things, can't say no, attracts people who take advantage of your inability to set boundaries, feels like an imposter no matter how successful you are, and goes through life feeling like you're watching yourself from the outside. This is the legacy of emotional neglect. This is why you feel empty, not because you're broken, but because you learned to break yourself, to cut off the parts of you that weren't acceptable, to become small enough, quiet enough, perfect enough to be loved. Let that sink in. You didn't fail, your parents failed you, not necessarily because they were evil, but because they couldn't give what they never received. And now, you're doing to yourself what they did to you. You're the one dismissing your emotions now. You're the one calling your needs selfish now. You're the one saying others have it worse now. You became the parent you needed, but you became the parent you had. Here's what you need to hear, and I need you to really let this land. Your parents didn't have to be monsters for this to be real. They didn't have to hit you. They didn't have to scream at you. They didn't have to lock you in closets or starve you, or do any of the things we typically associate with bad parenting. They could have loved you. They probably did love you. But love without attunement is like food without nutrition. It fills you up, but it doesn't nourish you. Your narcissistic parent might have truly believed they were preparing you for success, that teaching you to be impressive, to achieve, to make them proud was the same as loving you. Your authoritarian parent might have truly believed they were teaching you discipline, that structure and rules would make you strong, responsible, capable. They might have been doing the best they could with the tools they had. But here's the hard truth. Good intentions don't erase harm. You can understand where they came from without dismissing where you are. You can have compassion for their limitations without denying your pain. This isn't about blame, it's about understanding. Because here's what happens if you don't understand it. You repeat it. The narcissistic parent who couldn't see you, they had a parent who couldn't see them. The authoritarian parent who couldn't tolerate your emotions, they had a parent who couldn't tolerate theirs. This is generational. It's a cycle, and it continues until someone stops and says, "Wait, this isn't normal. This isn't okay. This hurt me, and I'm not going to pass it on." Maybe that person is you. Maybe you're here because you're starting to see the pattern, because you're noticing that the way you treat yourself sounds a lot like the way you were treated, because you're afraid you're going to do to your kids or to yourself what was done to you. If that's you, I want you to know, seeing it is the first step. You can't heal what you can't name. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. And acknowledging this doesn't mean you hate your parents. It doesn't mean you're being ungrateful or disloyal or selfish. It means you're telling the truth. Your truth. The truth your body has been carrying for years. The truth that you deserve to be seen. Not as an extension of someone else. Not as a soldier to be controlled. But as a whole, complex, feeling human being. You deserved parents who could hold your emotions without making them about themselves. Who could guide you without crushing you. Who could love the real you, not the polished version. You didn't get that, and that wasn't your fault, but now, as an adult, you get to give it to yourself. So how do you heal from this? How do you fill the emptiness that was created by absence? Let me be clear, I'm not a therapist. This isn't therapy, but I can share what the research shows, what survivors have learned, what works. First, you have to grieve. This might sound strange. Your parents are still alive. Nothing technically happened to you, but that's exactly the point. You have to grieve what didn't happen. You have to grieve the childhood where your emotions mattered, where you were allowed to be messy, loud, imperfect, and still loved. Where you could say, "I need help," without being called selfish. Where you could make mistakes without it becoming about someone else's embarrassment. Grief isn't just for death, it's for loss. And you lost something. You lost the experience of being fully seen and accepted as a child. Let yourself feel that. Don't rush past it. Don't minimize it with, "Others had it worse." Your pain is valid. Your loss is real. Second, you have to learn to parent yourself. I know this sounds like self-help nonsense, but stay with me. Remember Renee, the woman whose father screamed at her for finishing her homework before vacuuming? In her 30s, she started therapy, and her therapist gave her a practice. Every time she noticed herself dismissing her own needs, she had to pause, and she had to ask, what would I say to a child who needed this? When she was exhausted but felt guilty about resting, would I tell a tired child they're lazy, or would I say, you need rest and that's okay? When she wanted to say no to a request but felt selfish, would I tell a child they're obligated to make everyone happy? Or would I say, you're allowed to have boundaries? This is reparenting. It's learning to give yourself the responses you never got. It's learning to say, your feelings make sense. You're not too much. You're not a burden. You're human. Third, you have to challenge the beliefs you inherited. You learned that your needs are selfish. Challenge that. Whose voice is that? Is it yours, or is it your parents' voice echoing in your head? You learned that love is conditional. Challenge that. Find people who love you even when you're struggling, even when you're not achieving, even when you're just being. You learned that you have to earn your place in the world. Challenge that. You belong here simply because you exist, not because of what you do, because of who you are. Fourth, you have to get comfortable with discomfort. Here's the hard part. Healing feels wrong at first. When you start setting boundaries, you'll feel guilty. When you start prioritizing your needs, you'll feel selfish. When you start expressing emotions, you'll feel like you're too much. That's not intuition. That's conditioning. Your nervous system was trained to feel safe when you were small, compliant, perfect. So when you start taking up space, your body will scream danger. But just because it feels wrong doesn't mean it is wrong. You have to learn to tolerate the discomfort of being seen, of being imperfect, of having needs, of existing fully, messily, humanly. Let me tell you how Renee's story ends. After 2 years of therapy, Renee was at a family dinner. Her father asked her to get up and refill his drink. She was in the middle of a conversation. She said, "I'll get it when I'm done talking." Her father's face turned red. He started to say something, and Renee felt the familiar panic rising, the urge to apologize, to jump up, to make him happy, but she didn't. She finished her sentence. She stayed in her seat, and after a moment, her father got up and refilled his own drink. That's healing. Not a grand moment, not a dramatic confrontation, just a small choice to prioritize herself, to say, my needs matter too. The panic didn't go away immediately, but over time it got quieter, and her voice got louder. That's what's possible for you too. Not erasing the past, not pretending it didn't hurt, but learning to live differently, to treat yourself the way you deserve to be treated. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You're a person who adapted to circumstances that weren't safe for your whole self. And now you get to create new circumstances where all of you is welcome. Let's bring this full circle. You came here feeling that emptiness, that hollow space where something should be but isn't. And now you know why it's there. It's there because you were taught to cut off parts of yourself, to make yourself small enough to fit into someone else's needs, to earn love through performance, to hide your humanity. But here's what I need you to understand. That emptiness isn't permanent. It's not who you are. It's what was done to you. And more importantly, it's what you can undo. This video is part 1 of a series on the 12 types of parents who create empty children. Today we covered 2, narcissistic and authoritarian, but there are 10 more types we haven't talked about yet. The permissive parent, the workaholic parent, the addicted parent, the parentified parent, and others you might not have even considered. Because here's the thing, most parents who create emotional neglect aren't the obvious villains. They're the well-meaning ones, the ones who loved you but didn't know how to see you, the ones who were themselves neglected and didn't know any different. If this video resonated with you, I need you to do something for me. First, leave a comment. Tell me which type of parent you recognized. Tell me your story. You don't have to share details, just, this was me. Because I promise you, you're not alone, and your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Second, If you found value in this, hit that like button. It tells me this matters, that these stories need to be told. And third, subscribe. Because we're going deeper. Part 2 is coming, and we're going to unpack the subtler forms of neglect. The ones that hide in plain sight. You came here feeling empty, but you're not leaving empty. You're leaving with language, with understanding, with the beginning of a map back to yourself. Your pain is real, your healing matters, and you were always worthy of being seen. You never had a childhood where you could be fully yourself, but you still have a future, and this time you get to write it.